Tonight on GamePoints 371, is Netflix and Take-Two coming to some kind of arrangement about GTA? Also, a legend rides off into the distance as Pete Hines retires from Bethesda. All that and more in just a moment, but first I want everyone here to know that this is an audience interactive podcast. So if you're watching live here at Twitch TV /GamePoints, or later at any myriad of video hosting platforms, be they YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, etc., feel free to join the conversation with any questions, comments, concerns you might have. Just try to keep them germane to the topics on hand. All right, going right into the first story here. This here is from Eurogamer. The link to this story and all the stories we talk about will be provided down below in the description or over at our Discord server. So please go on by and take a look at those. Be sure to read them yourself. I highly encourage you to do it. Headline: Netflix reportedly looks to license GTA title as it moves into higher-end gaming. Not going to bury the lead on this one. In my opinion, this isn't necessarily something to be reporting on the idea itself. This seems to be more something the author is kind of coming to based on a few kind of wish listy things that some executives at Netflix were talking about. However, there is still merit to bring this up. Netflix is one of the bigger tech companies out there. I'm sure some of you might have heard the term FANG. What FANG is an acronym for some of the biggest market cap tech stocks out there, being namely Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. Some people also add an extra A in there for Apple, but that should give you an idea of what Netflix's market cap is when you stack that against those other big boys of tech. Netflix is not a small company, so when they do mention they want to get into gaming, we should take it seriously, and we've seen them all start doing that. You have Google working on its own VR headsets, as well as things like Amazon doing its YumbleLard. Facebook is all in on Oculus. Microsoft, well, I mean, their Xbox. They're competing with each other. So of course it makes sense for Netflix to step into gaming as well. However, I don't necessarily think it would be related to Grand Theft Auto, but let's not necessarily discount the possibility because they have the money to do it potentially. Enough of that though, let's go ahead and get into the article and see what it actually says. And remember, all the links will be provided down below or over on our Discord server. This is from Eurogamer. Netflix is reportedly looking to build upon its current content. Let me start over, sorry. Netflix is reportedly looking to build upon its current predominantly mobile-focused gaming offerings by introducing higher-end titles to its subscription catalog, and is said to have discussions about licensing a Grand Theft Auto game as part of the move. Hints of a more ambitious gaming plans at Netflix came with last November's announcement that the company has set up an LA studio, led by former Overwatch executive producer Chaco Sonny, to create a brand new AAA third-person RPG for PC. And a new report from the Wall Street Journal has shed further light on the Netflix plans, saying the company is taking steps to expand into higher-end games that can be streamed to TVs on PCs. Interesting. It would make sense. Streaming is going to be one of those things that they're getting very heavily into. We're not just talking Netflix, but everyone seems to try to be getting done streaming. Ubisoft, for example, had their worked out with Stadia when Google was trying to do that. That's what I'm talking about. All these companies are starting to get into it. Now, for those who are wondering if Netflix does games, like Base Nuke and Chat here says, Netflix has been toying around with the idea of games for quite a while now, and not necessarily in the form what you might think. For example, Black Mirror had their Bandersnatch game, which was more or less an interactive style TV show. Think something along the lines of the Dark Pictures anthology or Until Dawn, maybe even a little bit of the Quantic Dream stuff, where you kind of just watched a movie unfold and made a choice here and there. But there's also some smaller games on Netflix right now. I even think they have like a Tetris or two on there. Not positive. But you also have Amazon stepping in with Luna. Google had Stadia. All the big tech companies are trying to get into this. Remember, FANG. Sony doesn't necessarily compete with Microsoft, or Microsoft doesn't necessarily compete with Sony, I should say. Microsoft as a company competes with Facebook, Google, Amazon, Apple, etc. So Netflix, competing with those other big boys, would make sense they would want to jump into the gaming sphere as well, since all the others seem to be doing it. Apple, of course, being the one that's probably the farthest ahead on that with their massive iPhone arcade that they have. I know it's easy to point at Xbox, but at the end of the day, console gaming makes a fraction of what mobile gaming does. But that doesn't mean there's not room to expand, and Netflix seems really eager to get out of solid mobile gaming and into the console space. And since they're a streaming service and everything's trying to do the cloud streaming thing, kind of makes sense if you ask me. Now, do I think they're going to be actually getting the next Grand Theft Auto as some kind of exclusivity deal or anything like that? God, no. No way in hell. But they do have the money to maybe make some kind of streaming exclusive only on Netflix. Maybe it can't be streamed for the cloud to Microsoft or Sony devices or Nintendo devices. Oh, the Grand Theft Auto will be on Nintendo, but I digress. Actually, I think the older ones are now. Anyways, it's neither here nor there. Something to consider is that this is a possibility, and Netflix is hungry, as all the other ones, to break into gaming, a industry that makes more than Hollywood does, I believe, at this point. So it'll just be money lying on the table if you already have the tech to support it. Going back to the article itself here, Netflix has also had discussions to release the game within Rockstar's Grand Theft Auto series via a licensing deal as part of its escalating gaming ambitions, but the Wall Street Journal offered no hint as to what the title might have been targeting or discussions have run through. That's what I was talking about when I prefaced this article out against saying I think this might just be, might be someone at Eurogamer seeing Netflix and Grand Theft Auto in a sentence and going, hey, that's great SOE, let's go ahead and put that in there, or SEO rather, let's go ahead and put this into an article. And to be honest, that's why I'm leading with the story as well, to be clear. Do I think that this is actually something that's happening? Nah. I don't think it's a done deal. I think it might just be a rumor that someone wanted to comment on and speculate on because it gets clicks. But it makes sense. It has that certain amount of truthiness, as Stephen Colbert used to say on his show. It would be folly to ignore Netflix and Facebook and Google and Amazon when it comes to gaming. I know especially console gamers focus on the big three, Microsoft, Sony, and Nintendo. And it really hasn't been that long since we've had three big players. It used to only be Sony and Nintendo, and before then it used to only be Nintendo. And you can also talk about the remnants of Atari, but with some smaller ones in place, like in television or TurboGrafx and stuff like that. But times be a changing. We're becoming a more and more video game focused culture. We have been for the past 20 years. So, as I've already said, it makes sense for the big boy tech companies, even if they're not mainly focused on gaming, to start dipping their toes into it. Especially as we move more and more into an all-digital future. Which wants me to bring up the point that Best Buy and it seems Walmart are going to be discontinuing physical media sales of DVDs and Blu-rays, with video games supposedly not on that list, at least according to Best Buy, but it's only a matter of time before they start discontinuing that as well. This is the all-digital future that we're moving toward, and when that happens, hard drive spaces are going to start getting crowded and cluttered, and then enter streaming, where a phone can run the most high-end thing that you can think of with a simple controller just because it connects to a super beast of a computer somewhere in some server farm somewhere, and you pay $20 a month to get access to it. And we're talking about streaming, who has a bigger infrastructure in place than Netflix. This makes sense. Is it happening? That I can't say for certain yet. But I would not be surprised to know if they actively were trying to pursue this line of gaming. I fully expect Netflix to jump into this wholeheartedly within the next year or two as cloud gaming becomes more and more reliable. And it's definitely getting there. So something to consider for the future. Let's go ahead and move on to our next story here. This one's kind of a big one, not because of any game or anything we're releasing, but because of the potential impact on the industry. A legend is leaving. Pete Hines, Senior Vice President and Head of Publishing for Bethesda Softworks, has announced his decision to retire. Now, Pete's been with the company for almost over 2 decades at this point and is a reasonably popular figure. This is still an industry whose rock stars are few and far between. While many people work on the games, we only know the names of a few of them. Todd Howard, Hideo Kojima, Miyamoto, etc. Neil Druckmann, Ken Levine. And Pete Hines is on that list. Now, he hasn't necessarily developed a game in quite a while, but what Pete Hines was famous for was being the face of a company, more like of a Phil Spencer or Jim Ryan. And he wasn't necessarily afraid to take questions from rando people and then go from there, probably much to the dismay of the legal team at Bethesda. A very, very public figure leaving the company, of course, catches our attention whenever we mention it. Let's go ahead and go through the rest of this here. Pete's public presence was only a small part of his role at Bethesda, although the way he represented us carried over into the values he nurtured here: authenticity, integrity, and passion. His contributions have been integral in building Bethesda and its family of studios into the world-class organization that is today. His vision helped us push forward, and his hard work inspired us. We're thankful for 24 years of leadership and wish him the best with his next chapter. Now, that does not necessarily mean anything's going to get canceled or anything like that. As far as I can tell, he wasn't necessarily directing. He's not Todd Howard. From my understanding, he's been focused more on the business side of things for quite a while. So his departure, while a shakeup, isn't necessarily huge. But as what can happen whenever you have a major game that took many years to release, you are having a bit of an exit of talent at Bethesda. One of those people being, of course, Starfield's lead quest designer leaving Bethesda to join a super group of RPG veterans to create their own studio. This article here from Game Informer goes into a little bit of details about it. Starfield's lead quest designer, also a Bethesda design director, is leaving the studio to help other game veterans make another open world RPG. Will Shen was the lead quest designer and eventually design director on Starfield, meaning he's responsible for the Space Epic's very best moments. But he's actually been working on Bethesda's RPG since Fallout 3. In an interview with Game Developer, Shen confirmed that he is now joining developer Something Weird Games, a studio that has been founded by another ex-Bethesda lead. The team now houses an all-star lineup of RPG developers with former BioWare, Bethesda, and Obsidian staff all employed at the new studio. This one happens when a big game finally ends up. You have to imagine Starfield's been a part of this man's life for 3 to 5 years at this point. And the next thing that Bethesda Game Studios has coming up is, Elder Scrolls 6 after Starfield DLC? That's a lot of time spent to go out through 2 games. So I can imagine someone wanting to move to a quicker, more nimble experience. And this tends to happen. Your big game launches, you stay for a month to patch things up, and then you move on to bigger and better things. That's why Pete Hines is retiring now and didn't retire 6 months ago. And who knows if he actually might be going somewhere else or not. A lot of these people tend to retire only to be bored of retirement after and pop back up. Yes, Space Snooker, we will actually be talking about that later on. Back to the article itself here. Get a little bit into what this game is supposed to be. Something Weird's debut game is a brand new RPG called Weird Song, which combines dark fantasy setting with real-world myths and historical horrors. We interviewed the studio CEO, Jeff Gardner, last year to chat about the Lovecraftian horror, and he shed some light on the game's differing tones. Gardner said the following: I'm a big fan of contrast, so there are times when it's more relaxed and you're having fun in some sort of serene, and then there's these moments of abject horror. Gardner also likened the world's moody but fun atmosphere to Fallout, a shadowed road where you can still make you laugh. That sounds awesome, by the way. But one of the maxioms of GamePoints, along with don't pre-order, is no game, no hype. Cool, that description sounds cool. But until I actually see something, and it can't just be a CGI trailer or trailer full of accolades, it needs to be physical gameplay, there's no hype here. But hopefully we'll see what they're working on sometime next year. Of course, this doesn't mean it's the end of Bethesda Game Studio or anything like that, so don't worry about that. They'll still be hard at work and all kinds of stuff coming up. You still have people that have been there for many a year, and things are always in place to ensure, typically, an easy transition of responsibilities, unless he's fired. In this case, he wasn't. Pete Hines leaving is a big blow, but mainly to the PR side of Bethesda. We do have to steel ourselves to the fact that Todd Howard is also starting to kind of get up there too. His days there might be numbered. Not necessarily because of anything he's done, but just because he might be willing to move on. People age out. They grow tired. And studios turn into this weird ship of Theseus kind of thing where they have the name but all the talent's gone. BioWare, I'm looking directly at you on this one. So we have to start getting good with the fact that studios, their names don't last forever. At least not in the quality sense. Blizzard used to be revered amongst PC gamers. Now it's kind of spoken to as not a joke, but it certainly doesn't have the same shine it wants to way back when StarCraft and Warcraft first dropped. This is why I think we need to start moving away from studio names. BioWare, Oh my god, I forgot other studio names. Naughty Dog, Insomniac, Bungie, 434 Studios, etc. And we need to start focusing on the people. Kojima, Ken Levine, Warren Spector, Sid Meier, Todd Howard. What? Tried to summon names up on the fly, and of course you forget them. But we need to be following their careers, not the studios they work for, the people who make on the games, because they smack my microphone again, because they actually are the ones making this stuff. So that's what we need to kind of give a little bit better focus on. Not 2K games and not Firaxis. I love Firaxis. But Jake Sullivan leaving Firaxis is a big fucking deal. I don't expect the same output from that studio anymore because talent leaves. And we should be following the talent, not the studio. That's my 2 cents on it. Let me know what you think down below, by the way. Moving on, it seems that the Activision Microsoft deal, after many a month of legal wrangling, is finally done. The biggest deal in video game history finally wrapped up only a few days ago, with Phil Spencer sending a memo to all Activision Blizzards welcoming them as employees to Microsoft, coming only days after the UK CMA finally signed off on what they were doing. Moving to this article here from The Verge. Phil Spencer has now welcomed Activision Blizzard King. Important to note, we always forget King, but in my opinion, that's probably the biggest jewel of that crown. Activision Blizzard King employees to Xbox an internal memo to all Microsoft's full-time employees today, saying the following. We couldn't be more excited that Activision Blizzard employees are our colleagues, coworkers, and teammates, said Spencer. Bobby Kotick has agreed to remain in his role through the end of 2023, reporting directly to me to ensure a smooth, seamless integration. We look forward to working together as a unified team. We will share more updates of a new organizational structure in the coming months. Sounds like Kotick is out, or at the very least not staying any longer till 2023 unless they somehow re-up his contract, though I doubt it. I think Kotick wants to move on as well. Now, it's easy to shit-talk Bobby Kotick. God knows I love to do it all the time, but the fact of the matter is he actually successfully grew Activision to a significantly larger company than it was when he first took over. Yes, mired in controversy. Yes, we can all say that he's a dick. As from the gaming standpoint, you can say his tenure has been disastrous. From a business standpoint, however, the man made Activision bank, and we can't discredit that. So don't necessarily be surprised if Microsoft is able to come to some arrangement of keeping him on there. I doubt it, but it's possible. And I will also say that while Bobby Kotick might be leaving Activision, he didn't necessarily say he was retiring, so there is a good chance he might pop up somewhere else. We'll see. Now, the deal's done, right? StarCraft 2 is coming to Game Pass. World of Warcraft is going to be on there, and you don't have to pay a subscription for it if you have that. Well, not anytime soon. Let's go ahead and move on to IGN for the rest of the story here. Phil Spencer explains why there won't be any Activision games on Game Pass in 2023. Now, if you all remember, when the Bethesda deal closed, a lot of legacy Bethesda games popped up on Xbox Game Pass. This is going to take some time, however, with the Activision stuff, mainly because of all the legal bullshit they had to hop through. This has been a question since people's minds lately now that... sorry. Activision games on Game Pass has been a question on many people's minds lately now that Xbox's massive acquisition has finally closed. And today, Phil Spencer showed up on the official Xbox podcast to try to answer it. During the podcast, Spencer was questioned about the recent news that we wouldn't see a massive drop in Activision Blizzard games on Game Pass immediately after the deal finalized, as many had expected. As it was pointed out, a major flood of Game Pass newcomers happened when Xbox acquired ZeniMax. 20 Bethesda games dropped onto the service just days after, including some of the biggest franchises. Per Spencer, he said the following: "They're coming. Eventually. But regulatory challenges surrounding with this acquisition made it a bit trickier to navigate than the ZeniMax deal. Adding games to Game Pass isn't as simple as flipping a switch to put them on there." To quote Spencer, The truth of the matter is, Activision Blizzard keen, and that regulatory process took so long, and frankly, there was a lot of uncertainty in that process until a week before we closed, or the week of, when the CMA finally came down to their decision that we weren't able to get in and work with mostly Activision Blizzard in the case, or on our back catalog work. So now the deal's closed, we're starting to work, but there is work. What he's saying here is essentially when Microsoft bought Bethesda, they were able to work with them for weeks and months ahead of time. So that way, when the deal finalized, they had all the stuff on the back end ready to go, and then they flipped the switch. But since there was still some doubt of whether or not this could actually happen, the UK deciding to suddenly at the last minute turn heel and kill the deal, or make it more complicated, or demand some more concessions, which in turn might make other governments do the same, they're not going to waste all that time and effort getting Activision Blizzard's games ready to be put on Game Pass, only to have it all go to waste because a bureaucrat somewhere said no. So, they haven't been taking the time to put all that in place. They don't have it ready to go. It takes quite a while to have things integrated into the service. And honestly, this is one of those things that they can kind of drip feed out to you a little bit at a time. Microsoft has nothing major coming on the horizon that I can think of. Yes, they have things like Fable and Perfect Dark, and I'm sure the inevitable Gears of War and Halo and Forza, but where the hell are they? They ain't coming in the next 6 months. So what they can do is they can take this dead time, which Phil Spencer already said was an unacceptable amount of time between major releases, in that leaked court document that Microsoft themselves accidentally uploaded. And they can go, okay, we have nothing this month. Slap StarCraft 2 in there. We have nothing this month. Announce that World of Warcraft is going to be part of the Game Pass subscription, and you can just have it as well as all expansion. It is a way for them to say that they have news without actually having news and having a positive PR take on things, rather than going 6, 9, 12 months without a major release, and God forbid it be Redfall, like it was. So, do I expect all the Activision games to show up on Game Pass? Absolutely. Is it going to all happen in one day? No. I'm convinced they're going to slow roll this and milk it for all it's worth. I expect a slow rollout of Activision's catalog that they are going to stretch out for at least 3 years, going all the way up into whenever the next consoles are going to release. My opinion on it, anyways. Let's do a hard break into a news story here. This one, I love this company. I love both this publisher and I love what this publisher makes, and I love the studio a lot. So I'm very, very annoyed to see this be the case. Oh, before I move on, hold on. You wonder, when downloading a game, does Steam have to have a big server full of game to distribute to millions of players? Why is the game studio not ready to put it on Game Pass? Because a game or not server bureaucracy? I have no idea. I have no idea what goes on in the back end there. I have no idea of a complicated process that might take to make this happen. I'm just telling you what they're saying. All right, next topic here. What you're seeing here is a press release on Paradox Interactive. Harebrained Schemes and Paradox Interactive to part ways as a new Seattle-based developer seeks new opportunities. Oh, Harebrained Schemes. I love them. They made the most recent and sadly disappointing Lamplighters League from both a critical and personal stance, but they also make some amazing shit such as the Shadowrun trilogy and Battletech. They were gobbled up by Paradox, I want to say in 2018. Paradox being a publisher of mainly strategy games, map simulators, as a lot of the community affectionately refers to. Things like Stellaris, Hearts of Iron, Victoria, stuff like that. Your big, crunchy strategy games. Well, they're separating, and it seems to be over Lamplighters League. To the press release. Paradox Interactive and Harebrained Schemes, developers of the Shadowrun trilogy, Battletech, and Lamplighters League, have decided to part ways on January 1st, 2024. The separation is a result of mutual agreement stemming from each party's strategic and creative priorities. Paradox will retain ownership of the Lamplighters League and other games developed by the studio. And Harebrained Schemes will seek new partnership investment opportunities in publishing. COO Charlotte Nilsson of Paradox said the following. Paradox has refocused its strategy toward core niches with strategy and management games of endless quantities. We in Harebrained Schemes leadership have been discussing what would happen after the release of Lamplighters League, but a new project or sequel in the same genre was not in line with our portfolio plans. Hence, we believe that a separation would be the best way forward. Good news, they're not just closing the studio down, which they probably would have had every right to do so. Bad news, Harebrained Schemes does not get to take their IP with them, which sucks because one of the co-founders of Harebrained Schemes is Jordan Wiseman, the man who literally made BattleTech. And if he does not get to keep BattleTech as an IP, that means yet again this man has had this franchise ripped out from him. That sucks. Because there is no one more qualified to make another BattleTech game, if they ever make another BattleTech game, than the man who literally created the IP. Further infuriating is the fact that it doesn't seem like BattleTech or Shadowrun are on Paradox's priority list. They would rather make things like Hearts of Iron or Stellaris DLC, things that are relatively cheap, quote unquote, to make, but they can charge a obscene amount for it, because if there's one thing Paradox loves, it's a fucking DLC. And it's always way too expensive when it comes out. And yes, I am part of the problem because I buy it all the fucking. I am glad that Harebrained Schemes is not shutting down. They have had some great games. They have had some bad ones too. And let's not forget things like Golem Arcana, which was one of those weird toys to life things they tried doing back when that was popular. Was it Necropolis they did? That wasn't that great. And Lamplighters League had everything going for it, but came out very, very flawed. And I hate to say it, but kind of boring. But to see their big two games that I thought were excellent, staying with Paradox, really, really stabs me right in the heart here. That's rough to see. And it all stems from the fact that Lamplighters League just flopped hard. What you're seeing here is an article from PC Gamer. Paradox says the Lamplighters League sales were a big disappointment and confirms recent layoffs at developer Harebrained Schemes. To the article. Paradox Interactive has taken a big financial hit on the turn-based tactics game Lamplighters League, saying that sales of the game have been a big disappointment. Paradox also confirmed that significant layoffs have been made at developer Harebrained Schemes, but clarified that those layoffs occurred in the summer, a few months before the Lamplighters League was released. I believe we talked about that on the show back in June or July. Just 1 week after release, Paradox Publisher Interactive decided to throw in the towel, essentially saying it's eating the cost of making the game at a loss to the tune of roughly $22.8 million. Paradox said the decision to write down the development expense was made after the Lamplighters League release when sales failed to reach expectations. Paradox CEO Frederick Webster said the following in a press release. The Lamplighters League is a fun game for many strengths, and even though we see cautiously positive player numbers and subscription services, the big commercial reception has been too weak, which is frankly a big disappointment. Essentially, everyone's playing on Game Pass because it's free over there, but no one's bothering to buy it on Steam. Which brings up another problem with Game Pass that some people like to point out. It's apparent devaluation of games on the market. There have been many leaks over the past few weeks of how Game Pass works internally. One of them being how much money they're willing to give developers to put their games on Game Pass. And as the months have gone on, that dollar amount has gotten progressively smaller and smaller and smaller as Microsoft tries to make Game Pass profitable. What they're also doing, however, by having such a subscription service is they're devaluing the overall market because they're putting into the idea of the consumer head of, why spend 60 or 70 bucks on a game when I can spend 10 bucks and it'll be on Game Pass? Hey, great for the consumer. That makes perfect sense to do that. However, it does cause wider problems across the industry as a whole, as games get more and more expensive to make, and yet they're returning lower and lower amounts. And I know I hear people screaming, but games have made more this year than they have ever. Yeah, because one or two big hits. But when you have a failure like Lamplighters League is, that is devastating to the bottom line. That's something people don't like to take into fact. You'll make 10 games, and if one of them's a Fortnite, congratulations, that one Fortnite made up your entire money for the year. But those other 9 games are huge flops if they don't sell millions of copies these days, because game development has gotten so expensive. It is unsustainable. Because eventually, someone's going to make 10 games, and all 10 of them are going to fail. And you don't have the big Fortnite game to balance that out. The risk reward isn't there. If the risk is too high compared to the potential reward, your investors pull out. If your investors pull out, you have significantly less money to develop things. If you have significantly less money to develop things, you have layoffs, which is what you're seeing now. To give you an idea of how badly Lamplighters League flopped, according to the Steam charts, the game's all-time peak concurrent player count was just 690 people. Less than half of what was BattleTech had on that same day, a game that released back in 2018. So, to clarify, more people were playing BattleTech, which was a previous Harebrained Schemes that came out 5 years ago, than Peak played Lamplighters League on Steam. That is not good. The failure of the Lamplighters League also brought to light reports of layoffs of Harebrained Schemes, with one person claiming to be a former employee of the studio said on Resetter forums that roughly 80% of the studio's employees have been laid off in July. And the former employees have said on social media that they have been let go by the studio in that time frame. Yes, chat. It can be, having your game not perform can be devastating for a studio. They can just shut you down and everyone at the studio is gone. Because it takes so long to make a game. Imagine if you will, you're a company and you're paying 50, 100, 200 people. In the case of Ubisoft, sometimes 1,000 people to work on one game. Be it Lamplighters League or the next Assassin's Creed, to stick with the Ubisoft comparison. That means you're paying all those people for 3 to 5 years, because that's how long just a modern game takes to make these days. We're not talking indie stuff that can be cranked out by one person, like the Axiom Verge or things like Return of the Obra Dinn. We're talking your big stuff like Assassin's Creed Mirage. So for 3 to 5 years, you are making no money on that game. None. It's not out. It's all R&D. It's all research. It's all development. It's all producing and paying voice actors to come in and redoing it and having to test for bugs, and you bring in the QA team and they're going to have to bring in some extra freelancers, and that costs more. 3 to 5 years of no profit on a project, and then you release it and it bombs. Those people are gone. That's the long and the short of it. You want to know one of the reasons why so many people are being laid off in the games industry right now? Yeah, it's because the economy sucks, for sure. That's probably the biggest reason. But it's because if games aren't not just successful, but mega successful, they have to be leaps and bounds beyond what people think is a good number to actually justify development costs these days. Which is why I say it is unsustainable. Which is why I think you're seeing, over the past few years, big name developers, to go back to Ken Levine, piecing out and starting their own small to mid-range studios. Because you can be more nimble. Ken Levine's actually a bad example of it, because it's taken fucking forever to Judas to come out, and it probably still isn't even coming out next year, but I digress. I think you know what I mean. So yeah, it is this is going to be the news for the next year or so, I think. A game comes out, it doesn't hit numbers, layoffs happen. Speaking of layoffs, here via GameIndustry.biz, Frontier to lay off an unknown number of staff on organizational review. Disappointing financial performance, including lower than expected sales of F1 Manager, prompt cost-cutting measures. Now, we don't know the number of layoffs yet. It's coming, though. They have said expect layoffs, but they don't know what the full scope of it is. To the article itself. The UK developer Frontier is planning to lay off an unknown number of employees as it conducts an organizational review of its business. The news was announced to investors this morning as part of its trading update, in which the company said it plans to refocus on its core strengths following a period of disappointing financial performance and more challenging industry conditions. Essentially, they're saying, hey, shit costs too much, inflation's killing us, and the economy sucks. Organizational review aims to reshape Frontier around the strategy, return the company profitability, and shore up the business in the future. The review and any resulting actions expected to conclude by early 2024, with an update planned to be released alongside Frontier's financial results in January. So this quarter, they're going to be looking at what fat they can trim, what kind of headcount they can reduce, what projects they can cancel, which ones they can go along with, just general cost cutting, and probably across everywhere from developers to QA to like custodial staff in their building, and maybe even downsizing the building. It seems to be a top-down look at where they can pinch pennies. And that's going to take them 3 months to do. So I fully expect sometime in January, I'll be reporting on the layoffs of a substantial number of people from Frontier Developments. I know. I mean, what more can I say, right? Every week, it feels like this year, I've reported on more and more layoffs in the gaming industry. And I wish I can say I think this is the final one, but I can't. If you're working in the game industry or any industry in general, as we move into some very rough times, I will simply say what I have every week. Try to save a little bit of money. Be prepared for what might happen. Get your resumes in order. Better to be safe in this case than sorry. Worst case, let's say you don't get laid off. Awesome, you have some money set aside. Go on a vacation. But if you have that money set aside and you do lose your job, it's going to be a little bit less stressful for you. So please take these warnings seriously. This is not even close to the end of the layoffs. This industry is going. It is going to be a very, very bad 2020. Thought this year was bad? Wait until next, when all the big games have already been released and companies don't have those to fall back on. Ooh, it's going to get real nasty out there. Take a look at chat before we wrap things up here real quick. Does it make more commercial sense to have many studios which are small or less number of games of mega studios to make a big sales game? I have no idea. I would say that it would behoove the industry to focus on smaller, more nimble titles. That way, if they are a bomb, you don't necessarily risk the farm. And that seems to be what Ubisoft is trying to do with Assassin's Creed Mirage. And we'll see how that shakes out for them in the future. But that is a smaller title that I don't believe they're charging full price for that. I think they're charging like $50 instead of the typical $70 you're getting right now. Let me take a look at this real quick. I haven't thought about Assassin's Creed in a while. Assassin's Creed Mirage is not on Steam. Assassin's Creed Mirage is. I'll find it. I promise you that I will. $50. $49.99 because it is a smaller than typical game. It's they're not charging the next generation $7.99 or $69.99 for it. I do think that smaller games on smaller studios is a better way to inoculate yourself against having a flop. But these companies might be too bloated to do such a thing. I like to use Ubisoft as an example, which is a multinational global corporation that has thousands and thousands of people working on a single game across the planet. You have people from France communicating with people of Canada, going all the way down to San Francisco, who in turn have to talk to Thailand to get a game going. That kind of bloat is one of the reasons why Ubisoft hasn't been gobbled up yet, in my opinion. And they're not the only company to do it that way. Sony, for example, has to have two different corporate offices, one in Japan, or more than two. One in Japan, one in San Francisco, not San Mateo, I believe, another somewhere in Europe, and they all have to coordinate. And time zones are a thing. And every time you add one of those, the efficiency drops just that much, and in some cases by a lot. So I don't think these companies can transition to that. And I think that's one of the reasons why so many of them are so hungry for live services, because they need a more reliable income than just, oh God, please may this be a 10 million seller game. If we don't sell 5 million copies of this, we're fucked kind of situation. You'd be interested to see a stream about game player numbers. I'd have to. Maybe overall to see, like, we'll take a couple of the big ones like Grand Theft Auto Online, Fortnite, and see if they've been increasing or decreasing over the years. But typically, from what I understand, and I need to look deeper into this, online gaming has decreased this past year because it shot way up when the lockdowns happened, because everyone was stuck at home. So people playing online games shot way up. So of course, naturally, they would come back down as people went back outside again. But that said, that means that your numbers pale in comparison to last year's, which then in turn means investors get a little twitchy because why are you decreasing the subscriptions? Netflix had the same problem, same with Disney Plus, where people were canceling their subscriptions and going outside. So it's gonna be 2024 is going to be even more of a bloodbath than 2023 is, in my opinion. But we'll see. I hope I'm wrong on that. Anyways, thank you all for showing up. This has been GamePoints episode 371. I do stream this live every Tuesday at 8 p.m. Pacific Standard Time right here at Twitch TV/GamePoints, and you're more than welcome to come on by like so many of you do. Can't catch us live, however. You can catch us over at YouTube, Rumble, BitChute, etc. And regardless of where you watch it, feel free to leave a comment down below. I want to know what your thoughts are on the topics we talked about today. If you like what you saw and you want to support the stream, you know what to do. Like, spits, follow, share, subs, all that good stuff. There's a Discord server you can join, link provided down there. And you can follow me over on X/Twitter at CapitalistPig21. I also stream games throughout the week sometimes, so feel free to come on by Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday between 1 and 4 and 9 and midnight Pacific Standard Time, and we'll do things. I typically play indie or strategy games, sometimes horror. Tomorrow, I'm thinking, actually, no, I can't do that yet, so never mind. I was about to say I was going to play something, but I can't yet. Anyways, I'm heading out. Thank you all for showing up, and until next week, I'm out of here.